it's important to, I think for both the DP and a director to understand that you do have separate jobs. Some directors are really specific on cinematography, which I am all for. Like, more we can speak the same language, I would say the better. I think sometimes people are afraid of stepping on toes, which I think is a valid, thought. It's always kind of making sure that you're not crossing over into someone else's job, but also making sure as a director that you're able to be really specific on what you're looking for, because at the end of the day, it's their film.
My name is Wes Gibbons, and welcome back to the Tungsten Originals podcast. You just heard part of my conversation with cinematographer Alissa Rooney. We discussed her compelling body of work, how she approaches different styles of content, and her role as the DP for Frameio's Camera to Cloud product launch. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 66 of the Tungsten Originals podcast. Alissa, welcome to the podcast. How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm doing great. I really appreciate you coming on. My producer, Joe, who works at Tungsten, put me onto your work, and I've been really obsessed with going through your reel and all of the films that you've worked on, especially the Frameio Camera to Cloud announcement, which one is exciting because it's an exciting announcement. We use Frameio for our post-production workflow, and so I think my fellow filmmakers should get on that. But it's also exciting in that it was obviously a very huge production, and I'd love to pick your brain about it. But before we get into all that work, I want to figure out how you got started in this industry and started becoming a DP. So when did you first get interested in filmmaking?
Yeah, I feel like I don't have a super interesting story. I wish that I was kind of like everyone else, where you have the old, bought a Super 8 camera when you were 12 and went out and made movies. But I got started, I don't think I really did anything film related until I got to college, which was in the fall of 2015. And I think my only experience with anything related was photography, which I did really from middle school until now. Kind of got started doing just small things with a family camera, shooting flowers down the street, and just trying to figure out how to get shallow depth of field in my photos. I feel like I just started to experiment with things really early on and really enjoy it, and kind of became known as the photo girl in the family. So I would always go to the parties and take pictures. And then I think in high school, not only did I get into darkroom photography, which was so fun, and it's one of my favorite things I've ever done in life. I also started going to show tapings because my uncle worked at CBS Studios in Burbank, and so he would take us to shows that I would watch on the regular, which I thought was so fun, and just getting to see them do everything behind the scenes and sit up in the audience and kind of just observe. Instead of watching the actors or anything, I was watching all the crew people do all their behind the scenes things with camera and stuff like that. So I think that kind of sparked a love, or an interest at least, in film, and kind of gave me a reason to go to film school. And around that same time, I feel like my mom, I grew up in LA, but we never really, you don't really do the things, related to the town you grew up in. So I think my mom got really into
Right.
becoming a tourist of LA during that time as well, when I was about to graduate high school. And so we went on the Warner Brothers tour, the Paramount tour, things like that, where it was just really interesting to see, I think, the backlots and some of the sound stages and things like that. It was just something that sounded exciting, and I already had an interest in photography. And other than that, I never really did film before. Made a small music video right before applying to film school on an iPhone, and then I edited it on my iMovie on my old iPhone 4 and thought it was so good. It was terrible, but that was pretty much the only thing I ever really made prior to film school, and somehow I got in. I don't know why or how. I didn't really have any experience, but.
So whenever you were going into film school, did you right away know that you wanted to be a DP, or were you still kind of fleshing that out?
I had no idea what a cinematographer was. I think probably really until sophomore year. I mean, you kind of know that someone's like in charge of the camera and, you know, what their responsibilities are. But I feel like I didn't even really get on set until my second semester of my freshman year. And so it was kind of just going head first into like figuring out all the positions and not really knowing exactly what I wanted to do. Just knew I liked film and was kind of interested in camera. So I kind of kept my eye on that. Did a lot of ACing once I kind of learned what that was and what the job consisted of, probably my freshman into like mid-sophomore year, and then started taking on my own projects, not necessarily feeling like I was ready to do so, but just started getting asked. And then I think right off the bat, like, people could tell I probably had grown up doing photography just because I already had a little bit of an understanding of light and composition, and so I feel like I had a little bit of a head start, as opposed to other people who maybe had never done that before, just because I feel like my frames were already like well composed. I had no idea what I was doing with lighting, but there was an essence of like a little bit of prior knowledge, I think, that went into that.
So was there a specific, like a project that you work on that after you shot it, you thought, okay, DP, that's what I want to do?
Yes. There was a film that I did in school, at least I went to Biola University. We had a class, most people took it junior year, called Biola Film, where it was just like one semester dedicated to making a film. And so you had one director, one producer, one DP, and then everyone else filled out the other roles. And two of my friends that I made most of my stuff with in college, Summer Wagner and Caitlin Kolb, we formed like the first, I think, female group to make a film in that class. So it was like producer, director, and DP were all women, and it was a powerful message about like something that goes wrong in a camp. And so it was just a really amazing experience. I think I had shot maybe 5 things prior to this film, and it ended up being like a $12,000 budget and 70 people up in the mountains for 2 weekends. Like, I had no idea what I was doing at all, but knew that I wanted to do that and knew that I loved it. And so I think that project is so special to me, and I have so many fond memories of it, and ended up not looking like trash. Like, it's not the best thing in the whole world, but like, I just can't even, obviously there's so many people involved too, it wasn't just me, but just can't believe that it looks the way that it does without any knowledge really going into it, to be honest. I remember everything that I didn't know at the time, and it's terrifying. I was like, I would never let myself shoot that, but that was something like, you know, that's really memorable, and just a project. I think not only was I proud of the work and the people, just the whole experience was amazing, getting to tell a story that I felt was important. I think it just had every aspect of what we love about filmmaking in it, and that was really cool to be a part of.
I think that it's a really defining moment in every filmmaker's career where you make something and you're like, well, it's not bad. Finally, it's not good, but it's not bad.
It's not good, but it's not awful, you know? Like, it wasn't,
right.
It went to a couple festivals. I'm more speaking of my own work, not even the story. It was just like,
right.
You know, I actually still post some frames from it. Like, that to me is, you know, shows something. It's like, if years later, you know, I'll still post some stuff. It can't have been that bad, I guess. At least in my own opinion. Maybe other people thought it was terrible.
Right.
I don't know.
And so did you graduated in 2019, I assume?
I graduated a semester early, so I graduated in fall of 2018.
Looking at your reel, it seems as if you've been in the industry for like a decade because of the incredible things that you've shot, and like, you know, scrolling through like the work tab on your pages on your website is just so long, and it's all just such great stuff. So like, your career has really had a steep, fantastic trajectory since you graduated. So how was that transition from film school to the professional world? Like, right away, were you immediately getting work, or were you kind of like stumbling into things?
So I feel like I have a weird story. In college, at least for my internship, let me start that over. I think I prepared myself really well, I think, for graduating, in terms of the people that I met while in school, and then like what I got myself involved in terms of hopping on people's sets outside of school, networking, grabbing coffee with people. And then in terms of my internship that I had to do for school, my mentor ended up getting me an internship at Light Iron, which is Panavision's post house for color. And so I ended up, I think it was my junior year, interning, maybe it was my senior year. No, junior. Interning at Light Iron for a semester, which was amazing. It was a paid internship, like couldn't have asked for better. You just learn a lot about color and how that whole process works in that company. And then got really close to the people that worked in marketing there, and they ended up just keeping me on as a freelancer for 2 years. So while I had that job basically, that I pretty much did work for them every day. I would go into the office a lot, or if I had things to do for school, I would just stay at school and do work remotely. And so that lasted for 2 years and just gave me a really good introduction into marketing, which is really different, but also just meeting people in the industry and meeting everyone at Panavision and just really becoming a part of a team. And that carried me through my transition, from film school, which I feel like most people can't say, and I'm really grateful for it. So right when I graduated, I didn't really have that oh crap, what do I do now? I need to find a job or need to figure out kind of what I'm doing next. I already had that next at that point. It wasn't an end goal, but obviously it was something that was really important for me and allowed me to be able to shoot free projects or cheap projects as I graduated, just to continue practicing and getting more work and networking, just because I already had an industry job that honestly was really flexible with my time. I actually still live at home. I'm almost done paying my loans, just knocking it out. But I have my family here, and so being able to graduate and move back in and not pay rent, I'm self-sustained. I sustain myself. However, I just don't have to pay rent, and so that's a huge thing. Not having to worry about rent, so it's cover food, gas, whatever, and then just knocking out my loans. So kind of just trying to be responsible in that aspect and get rid of all the debt that's overhead and things like that.
The debt, as I'm sure the film students listening, is very daunting. So that's amazing. So I want to dive into your process, because you've shot a wide variety of narrative work, music videos, and commercial work. And I think talking about how the process between those categories differs is really interesting. So whenever you're approaching a narrative project, what is your pre-production process like when working with a director and or a writer?
Between the pre-pro process, I guess I just spend a lot more time dwelling on a script. I feel like more recently I've been doing a lot more corporate content for Frameio, and I've been doing a lot more music videos, as opposed to narrative, which has been more far and few between recently, which is unfortunate, but I'm still happy to be doing what I'm doing. And also actually documentary has been really consistent as well. And so narrative, it's been a little bit of time, to be honest, but I feel like I would always make sure, that I connect with the script and that I believe in whatever the story is. Because it's a lot of work to make a project, and I want to enjoy what I'm doing and believe in the content that I'm shooting. And so I think it's all about making sure you have a good connection with the director, spending time with the script. There's a lot of different things I do, like reading the script multiple times, reading it a first time, without trying to visualize every shot. It's just to read the script to capture what the story is, which is really hard because I'm super visual. So it's forcing your brain to not connect with, what the angle is going to be. To not do what you're best at, right? Yeah, exactly. So I think it's a lot more of an emotional connection when I do narrative, as opposed to commercial or music video and things like that. Those can still be emotional. It just is, to me, a little bit of a different feeling.
Yeah. So the way you use, what really stood out to me specifically about your work is the way you use, it's a tongue twister, light, to really draw in the audience, with your negative space and the shadows and just the really creative color that I saw in your reel and the work that's on your website. was really interesting, especially in those music videos. I watched a few of them, like the more recent ones that came out, and they're just so creative. So since those are more in your like recent work, how do you approach projects differently? Obviously, it depends on the artist and the song and what fits for that thing. But like I noticed that you had a music video that was like recorded live, you know, like the band actually playing it live. But then you, of course, have the music videos that are pre-recorded and they're assumingly lip syncing on set, and you can get a little bit more creative with the visuals there. So how do those approaches differ for you?
I don't necessarily think there was much of a different approach, to be honest, in terms of the live project and the ones done just, you know, on set with lip syncing. I just remember, I think you're talking about She Calls Me the Moon, where we were in like
Right.
a studio space, which was really fun. The artist, honestly, funny story about that. Like, for that music video, I was sitting in a coffee shop with a female director, and we were just connecting over a script that we were maybe thinking about shooting at a certain point. And this guy walks over in a coffee shop and is like, "Hey, is any one of you a cinematographer? Because I'm looking for a DP for a music video." And I was like, I am. Like, I don't know. I had one of the most classic Hollywood experiences for that music video,
Yeah.
where I literally got a job in a coffee shop because everyone there is doing like film work or writing scripts. And sometimes I would be a
Right.
little bit skeptical of what the project would be if it's coming from someone random like that. But they had like a
Yeah,
budget. And we
totally.
shot a really cool music video that I'm still really proud of. And so that's just a funny story with that. There wasn't much of a different approach for that music video. The artist was super talented. It was his idea to do a live performance for that project. Obviously, we shot things over and over again. The thing was, the main
Right.
track, just the audio track, was live, and then just like a music video, they were lip syncing to it. So we did one master shot where they were happy with the audio. And then we were able to obviously play that
okay.
audio over and over again, and then they were singing to that. So it wasn't like we had multicam going on or anything. Yeah, but it was live because, you know, they were able to capture all of it there, and then they just made their own tweaks. So it was still really cool. It was a little bit of a different process, but for the most part, it was fairly similar, you know, to a music video until we got that one take that they were really happy with.
So what does a project like, whether it's music video, commercial, or whatever it may be, what does it need to get you to say yes? Like, sans budget and pay and like the obvious incentives of working on a thing. But in terms of the story that you're telling, because even though it's a commercial, you're still telling a story. What does it need to grab you as a DP?
To me, well, you know, the thing is, I graduated a little over 2 years ago now, I think. And so, you know, a lot of projects, you know, I'm still likely to take, if they have
Right.
a budget for me to shoot. You know, obviously I need to get paid, but it's not even necessarily about that. It's just about me making sure that I have the equipment I need and the crew that I need to make something that I know I'm going to be proud of. So that's honestly first and foremost. You know, I do get people reaching out to me randomly through email and things like that. So I think the main thing is just making sure that they actually have a budget that we can work with, and have, you know, the intention of hiring crew and things like that. So that's my number one thing about taking projects. And then, you know, at this point, like, I'm into music videos, commercial, documentary, narrative. Like, I don't have a specific thing that I'm necessarily looking for, I guess. In terms of narrative, I would say that's probably where I'm most specific. I love narrative dramas. So the second someone sends me something related to that, I'm going to be a lot more intrigued to make time for it, especially if it's lower budget. And, you know, having a full-time position as a DP now, it is a little harder to take freelance. And so I do have to be a little bit more selective in terms of that. And so, you know, if a narrative comes along, it's really going to give me incentive to take it in general. If I get sci-fi and things like that, I'm not like huge into sci-fi, to be honest. or horror. Like there's certain genres that come and I'm not as excited to like read the script or even take the time, but I'm always interested in connecting with the people on the other end, and either way, like having a phone call, seeing what the project's about. I think that's what's exciting, is you never know what's going to come, and so never looking for anything in particular. It's just, is this interesting to me once it comes? It's always interesting getting vastly different pieces of content.
So I want to dive into your work on the Frameio camera to cloud announcement, which was this huge production. Like I said, in the intro, a very exciting announcement, both for people who use Frameio, like myself and many filmmakers out there, but also, for your career. Like you told me before we started recording, you're now the full-time DP at Frameio, which is amazing. So could you first explain, as an official employee of Frameio, could you explain to the audience who may not know about Frameio, like what it is?
They're gonna watch this and they're gonna so judge me on my explanation of their product. Frameio is a they're gonna see it.
Pressure's on.
Yeah, it is. I'm trying to think of what the word is. Collaboration. It's like, yeah. So Frameio is a online collaboration tool for artists. It doesn't necessarily have to be for filmmakers. It can be used for photography, sound design, even musicians, things like that. It's a place where people can upload content and really easily make notes on the content throughout the timeline and share with other people. It's a really great platform for content sharing and making notes and comments and things like that. So I'd recommend it, honestly, not because I work there at all, but just because it's an amazing product in general. I personally used it before working for them. It's clean and easy and an amazing tool that I can never be without now.
Yeah, we just started using it for our post-production pipeline for the podcast, and it's a similar thing. I wanted to try it out with my editor because I had heard about it and used it like years ago on a project, but hadn't used it recently. And so we tried it out and we were really like, yeah, this is just so much easier. Originally, we were uploading to like a cloud-based file sharing service, and then like I would upload and then he would download, and then it was just like so much more complicated. But so free plug to your employer. Yeah. Everyone should use it.
Yeah, it's just so just clean. It is the best. And I feel like once you get into using it and you really learn all that it has to offer, because there's a lot of little tricks and tools that that it has that you are hidden, you might not really know about. But once you fully learn how to use it, you can't go back because it's so easy and clean. And yeah, I love it. Anytime people are like, it's on Vimeo, like you can make notes, and I'm like, can we put it on Frameio? Because it's so much easier to just like make notes on the timeline wherever I need it.
Yeah, I actually I was reviewing an episode from my editor, and I was able to just watch it on the subway. I'm based in New York right now, so I was like on the subway going somewhere, and I was watching on the subway, and I was like, I could not do this with anything else. So yes, we're gushing over Frameio, but it's truly worth it. I highly recommend it.
And you can also there are free accounts as well, so I think you can download it for free and try it out as well, just with a small amount of storage.
I think I had like a 2-week free trial or something. And like I said, we did it, and then we just fell in love. But what you specifically worked on is Frameio had this big announcement about their camera to cloud system, which basically makes it to where you can put a Teradek on your camera, which a lot of people already have and already use, and it just uploads the footage straight to the cloud and synced with audio. And it's not streamed, but it's like recorded in H.264 codec and synced to the time code and everything. And it's like the technical aspects are perfect. And then people offsite, like producers or directors, can review it, and editors can automatically start working on it. And it's, again, it seems so well done. Just
what did you think about
how
it
they demonstrated it
when you saw it?
I really wanted to like get on a production that was using it, because I'm currently a COVID PA on Law and Order SVU, and so I've talked to the guy who runs like our version of that. It's not Frame, because he was using it pre the announcement, so I don't know what it is.
Is it Pix?
Maybe. I didn't even
Oh,
get the
okay.
name. I just wanted to like pick his brain about it, cuz he just has I don't know if he is the DIT. I think he's specifically for offloading this to like the cloud and stuff. But that came out of like, COVID. He said, previously they used to have these huge video villages and all the producers could be there and everyone that needed to be there could be there. But of course, with COVID, which is, obviously the department I'm on, they're able to stream it to everybody. And so a writer in their home in LA or wherever can watch it and offer notes and stuff. So that really interested me. And then seeing like the software that I already used make an announcement, I was like, well, now it's accessible to me
Yeah.
because his cart and all of his stuff, like I wouldn't even know where to begin. It looked so insanely complicated. But the software that I was already familiar with, having it was really exciting. And so I watched the review or the announcement that you did, you made, and it just seemed so streamlined. So can you explain like, how did you get involved with this project? Because, like I said, it's a huge production. The announcement video in itself, I think, is like 45 minutes long, and there's multiple different sets and segments and all this kind of stuff. How did this kind of come across your radar? How did you get involved?
I've been friends with Michael Cioni for a few years now, since working at Light Iron. He's one of the founders of that company. And basically he's been working at Frame for the last, I think, a little over a year now, and he
Hmm.
had offered me up the project, a little late last year, and so I was definitely interested. At the time, I was a full-time cinematographer for the Salvation Army, so it was something I definitely had to coordinate between that as well, because I was consistently shooting documentaries for them. Um, but he offered it to me, and I couldn't turn it down. I mean, it was just such a good opportunity to shoot something that I believed in, and,
Hmm.
tech that I was excited about, and doing a product launch was new to me, but something that I was still interested in doing. And they just had lots of great ideas for it, and I was really looking forward to sinking my teeth into something new, especially with friends. So, it was offered to me by people I knew and trusted, and definitely was worth, obviously, my time. It was great.
Talk about like the scale of the production, because I mean, even with the first shot, you can tell that it's huge. I'll actually in the intro, he talks the speaker talks about how y'all are filming on the Paramount Backlot, and I think it's really cool that you used to do the tours there with your mom, and then you ended up shooting there. So was that kind of like a oh wow moment? Here I am filming something here.
Yeah, it was really cool. That's definitely a full circle moment for me. Just, touring before film school, getting to check out the Paramount Backlot with my mom, to shooting on the backlot. You have to rent out the whole backlot for the day when you shoot there. And so it's just really cool experience. I've obviously been there quite a few times prior to that, just for cine gear and a lot of events and things like that. But, to be able to be the DP of a project there was definitely really cool, and not something you get to do every day. So yeah, it was just an amazing experience that I'm, proud to have been a part of in terms of that.
Right. So, and it was also shot during COVID. And as we've all had to adapt to filming in COVID, it certainly is difficult, but we're getting used to it. But so, what was the biggest hurdle that you had to overcome with filming that announcement video?
There's always so many problems when you're actually shooting, and then now it's just
Right.
looks like a positive when you look back on it.
Right.
Um,
Rose-colored glasses.
yeah, I think if anything, being able to have people watch it and get to experience camera to cloud in real time, and really see how the process works was definitely a challenge. And I think doing it in a one take and really showing people from start to finish how camera to cloud works, from the camera onto your iPad, like that is, I think, something that was really compelling to people. And a lot of people shared with me after that that was really cool to watch, because it really couldn't have been done any other way, to really sell it to people and for them to understand what was happening. That was challenging. I mean, it was a long one take. It was a lot of lighting and, a lot of takes with Steadicam. But I think it ended up paying off, and I'm proud of what the team did and, how it turned out in the end.
Whenever you're working on these commercial projects, you're working with like a company, and their brand image is in your hands in a way. And, like with Frameio, that's the camera to cloud is obviously a really huge announcement, a product they've been working on for a while. How do you balance those interactions with the suits, if you will, both for Frameio, but for other corporate things that you've worked on?
What's helpful is that the director and producers are all very familiar with filmmaking and their product in general. I think sometimes when you do commercial type, producers or people that are in charge of the product might not necessarily have much of a filmmaking background, but are still trusting you to portray their product correctly, or how they see it or want it to be portrayed. And so I think what was helpful is, the CEO and the director have a filmmaking background, and so they knew what they wanted. So it was a really healthy collaboration, I would say, achieving, a balance of my style and theirs together. If they didn't like something, they'd let me know and we'd figure it out, or vice versa. Just because we speak the same language and we can understand kind of what each other's going for, which I think was really helpful and made it easy.
So working on something like that announcement, like a product launch that you said, like, you didn't have too much experience working with before, especially on a project that filmed over a couple months, what do you think you learned the most from working on the camera to cloud announcement?
You're asking deep questions that I haven't asked myself.
That's the goal. I'm glad.
I think if I learned anything, I've worked with really big crews before. I've shot commercials for companies. But to me, like every time I shoot, I feel like I learn things about lighting that I maybe didn't not necessarily know, but I feel like you just start to continue to acquire little pieces of information for the next shoot that's coming. And so shooting on the Paramount Backlot, it's a large space, it's outdoors, we're shooting during the day, things need to be controlled and look pretty still. So I think a big thing is just about balancing large spaces for me, and just lighting in general. My gaffer, Taylor Huddleston, was super duper helpful, obviously, on this shoot, and really carried the lighting in terms of the main portion, that was in Paramount. And just great collaboration and figuring out kind of how to balance that best, and walking away with little tidbits of information and things for the shoots in the future that I think are priceless, or working with large pieces of equipment. I mean, we had a techno crane on track, and so I had not personally used that before, and so just acquiring little pieces of information about what's possible, how to best work with the people that are in charge of that, so that they can do their best work. It's a lot of coordinating, which I don't think I necessarily, I feel like I'm used to that coordination, but when you get new pieces of equipment, it's about learning their style and how they want to approach it, and making it a good time for them as well, so that they can, like I said, do their best work.
I'm really glad you brought up working with your gaffer, because I want to dive into that relationship of a DP working with a gaffer a little bit, because I think, it varies film school to film school, but I'm sure there are DPs right now currently in film school that don't have a lot of experience working with gaffers, because maybe they've worked on sets where the crew is so small that they're the ones doing the lighting. They don't have like a whole G&E team and all that kind of stuff. So what do you think is the most important thing for a DP to know or do when they're working with a gaffer to figure out lighting plans and just execute the lighting that they need to execute?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I can actually really heavily relate to the film school aspect of not really having a lot of people on G&E in school. Whether it was, honestly, my biggest problem with film school was always checking out the gear. Like, I hated going to an equipment room, like bringing my own personal car, shoving like
Yep.
freaking 100 cases, scratching the sides of my car, like trying to just like
Yep.
Tetris my way in. Like, I always was there for like 3 hours and I left exhausted. It was like, that is my most miserable part of film school, to be honest. Like, it's the thing I hated most in life at the time. Anyways, now that I've had therapy about that,
Right. Right.
I did a lot of my own lighting, yeah. And to be honest, I feel like I didn't even do that much lighting in school. A lot of the projects that I did, like, I would try to utilize natural light, or I'd use lamps, bring
Right.
practicals in. If I was shooting outside, like, I'd shoot under street lamps, make sure I had like highlights in my frame still. So I was still, using my brain in terms of, knowing I needed a key light, like what looks good, like making sure I have highlights in the back. um, but I was definitely lacking in like um, in renting a lot of lights because it was just so annoying. I didn't have the car to put things in, and um, or like the hands to carry like a giant sky panel case. Like, I just didn't have the tools
Right.
for it. I wish I did, and that's
Yeah.
one of my biggest regrets in film school is not lighting a lot more than I did. I think I've learned a ton coming out. So it's not like I feel inferior now. It's just I feel like I
Right.
could have been even better now because I would have done it a lot more even then. But communication with the gaffer, yeah, I would say like I used a gaffer in school a few times, but never really someone that was professional, which is interesting. Because you're working with all students. So to me, what's really important about a gaffer now, this is just my personal opinion. I don't really know what anyone else's is, but it's like he or she, whoever I use, like, I expect to have a really good understanding of their tools, and so they know, if I need hard light or soft light, if I need sunlight through a window or overhead like kitchen light, they know what tools to use, when I need something specific, and they know. I would expect my gaffer to also just have an eye for an aesthetic image, like understanding balance and highlights in the frame and color temperature. Like, at least Taylor Huddleston, who I've been working with a lot lately, is so talented, and he has an eye. Like, he's not a cinematographer, but he cares about the image so much and really does understand, similarly to me, what looks good and what needs to be added or taken away. Like, he really just understands the tools that are necessary for a job. And so I don't necessarily want to worry about that, just personally. Like,
Right.
if, I know where I want to light, I know what color I want it to be, I know the quality that I want it to be, but I don't necessarily know the specific light that I want. And I don't really care. Like, I tell Taylor specifically, I'm like, this is what I want. Like, I don't care what you use. Like, just give me the quality and the shape and things like that. Which I think is a good time for him too, because he gets to, be in charge of his own gear and figure out what's best to use. He's the one with the knowledge and has been doing it a lot more than me. So I trust him to pick the right tool for the job. And I think that's a fun collaboration too, because we both get to go back and forth about what's good. And I'm always asking him, like, do you like the shot? It's always fun. Like, everyone's like, well, it's up to you, but I want to know if other people like it. If there's something you don't like,
Yeah,
I'm so
totally.
open to having a conversation about why you don't like it and why we want to change it. Because it's not just my image, it's everyone's that's on set. And so,
Totally.
yeah, communication with the gaffer is super important. I think I'm still working on it, obviously. I think we're always getting better at communication and figuring out, we all have slightly different language of how we describe things. I think I try to be as clear as possible with whoever I'm talking to, especially in like pre-production, making sure that they have what they need to get the job done, and approaching it, making sure we're telling the story, doing the story justice, based on how we're lighting and things like that. So communication's important, and don't know anything like any specific communication things that I use, but I think, yeah, that's a big thing, is just allowing my gaffer to be able to also collaborate with me and choose his lights and diffusion and things like that. Like, some people are really specific on what they want to use. That's totally fine. Like, we're all super different, and maybe I'll change my mind one day and I'll be really specific on the units that I want to use. But at the moment, I'm not super specific on that.
In the same way, like you were saying, that the communication between a DP and a gaffer is so important. Obviously, the communication between a DP and a director is a pivotal part to any project. So, as a director, I like to ask people who communicate with directors, both on the podcast and just in general, what should directors like not say? Like, what have you learned from your horror stories working with directors? Because it's all a communications game, an interpersonal communications game. You have to be able to talk to people to do it effectively. You can have like a vision and have a great story and all this kind of stuff. Like, if you can't talk to people, it's not going to get made. So, without naming names, obviously, or going into any extreme specifics, what advice would you give to directors who are starting to work with DPs on a more professional level, about how to communicate with them effectively?
Yeah, advice. I would say, it's important to, I think, for both the DP and a director to understand that you do have separate jobs. Some directors are really specific on cinematography, which I am all for. Like, the more people know and the more we can speak the same language, I would say the better. I think sometimes people are afraid of stepping on toes, which I think is a valid, thought. It's always kind of making sure that you're not crossing over into someone else's job, but also making sure as a director that you're able to be really specific on what you're looking for, because at the end of the day, it's their film. I'm really big on, I don't really like to personally to hear that, like, when DPs fight directors on things, just because, I will, if I think something should be a different way, I'll definitely recommend it, and maybe push for it a little bit. But at the end of the day, like, they're in charge. It's their project, it's their story, and they're, at the end of the day, they're, what they say goes. And I'm a really firm believer in that, and I respect that. And so I think just being able to really communicate, or have that communication between the director and the DP in terms of what they're looking for, and having a healthy balance in terms of what each other's going for in a piece is really important.
I want to go back a little bit to what you were talking about with that first project in film school that made you realize that you want to be DP. I like how you pointed out that it was your first time working with, a full team of women, both as a director and producer, and yourself, of course. And Tungsten just filmed a project called Lighthouse Keeping just this past weekend, actually. And the set was almost entirely women. The director is a woman. We've got women producers, and the DP is a New York-based woman DP who I was looking at the shots the other day, and they're truly incredible. But I want to talk about your experience working, with those all women teams. Sadly, as we all know, that's not as common as it should be. But can you talk a little bit about why that's important and the change in related to that you hope to see in the future?
So yeah, the heads on that project called Little Lantern were all women. I think even the production designer, one of the producers. So that was it was really cool. I'm super open to having a fully diverse crew, so I don't necessarily need it to be all women. I think it's personally it's really fun, just because I feel like we all really get each other. It's just a fun vibe. I think we all feel really comfortable when we're all working together, especially if they're friends. And it was just a special, I think, project because it hadn't been done before. I'm not necessarily saying that every single film that they do should be, women, led by women, or a full team. But I do think it's important, to have that change off, so that we can have lots of different stories told, because we're you know, I think we're at a point where we see a lot of the same stories coming out. And so I think it's just important that everyone shares personal stories, and just because we haven't heard as much from women, it's so exciting to be able to not only work with female teams, but also hear the stories that females have to offer. And I think sometimes that was a really delicate story in particular, and I think it made it really special to have a female team just because of the content. There was a lot of children in the project as well, and so sometimes I think just having a little bit more of a feminine leadership and vibe could potentially, not always, but potentially make it a little bit more of a softer, you know, introduction, and even communication with the kids and things like that. And just for the content of the piece, I think it was really important. But not always. I think that there's just a time and place for all of that, and it was really cool to be a part of one of those.
Yeah. So as you've transitioned to working professionally in the industry, do you think like we're moving in a direction where women department heads and that kind of stuff is going to be more commonplace?
I'd like to think so. I mean, it seems like
right. Totally.
It seems like right now, you know, people are really fighting for that diversification in terms of leadership. I think I would love to see it more in like G&E and certain like places. Like I've never worked with a female gaffer, and I would love to. So if you have any recommendations, let me know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's just like if people aren't given the opportunity, it just makes it harder because there's the pool is so much smaller. And so I'd love to, you know, I still spend time trying to find more women to replace a lot of my roles on set, just so I can start to also, you know, be a part of continuing to all raise each other up in that way. And so, yeah, I would like to think that we're headed in that trajectory. It's kind of hard to say, you know. I feel like I've just been fortunate in the last year, so I would say in my sphere, yes. I can't really speak to anyone else's though.
I want to dive into a audience submitted question. So those of you who are listening to this, you should follow us on Instagram at Tungsten Originals. Anytime I interview a new guest, I always put up a story and ask for questions. And Seth, friend of the show, film school friend of mine who's been on the podcast, he asked, how do you fight ageism in the industry? So obviously, you know, you said you're talking about how you graduated film school in 2018. So I feel like in an industry like this, it can kind of be hard to fight for people to take you seriously if you are younger. So have you had to face that a lot in the projects you've worked on?
To be honest, I don't think most people know how old I am, and I think that has always like benefited me, maybe.
Played into your favor. Yeah, right.
I don't post my age, but I'm also not keeping my age a secret. I think that I'm also like, you know, whether it's family trauma or whatever, like I feel like I'm a good communicator and and like can hold a good conversation, and so I think sometimes like maybe people think just the way I carry myself, I'm a little bit older, and maybe I look a little bit older. I don't know. So I've never really experienced any negativity regarding my age, really. And most people don't ask. Maybe that's a newer thing, kind of, where people just kind of avoid that question of like, so how,
Let's just
how
keep
old
it
are
that
you?
way.
Yeah, because, you know, it's not really a fair question. It's like, if you like my work, it shouldn't really matter.
Right.
I also understand, I guess, where people come from, you know, like experience is important. And if you had to choose someone with a few more years of experience, it's always a benefit, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to do a good job. And I've never had that experience, to be honest, and hopefully we'll kind of keep it that way. It wouldn't feel good, you know, to be rejected maybe based on your age.
Totally.
Of course.
Absolutely. Because as long as the work is good, what else matters?
Exactly.
So a lot of people listening to this podcast are in film school or have just graduated film school. I can personally vouch that this is a weird time to have just graduated during the pandemic when the industry has been uprooted. And so, you know, I know a lot of people that are looking for answers or advice around like every corner. So what advice would you give to someone who has just graduated film school and wants to become a DP and, you know, just make good stuff, what would you say to them?
Yeah, for anyone that's graduating film school and is looking to become a DP, it is a really weird time. I've got a lot of friends that are also, figuring that out right now, just graduating or maybe out a year or 2 years. A lot of people do seem a little bit lost right now in terms of, what to do. Feel like they've gotten, a little bit of an, I don't even know what to say, like not gotten the same opportunities, I guess, as a lot of other people coming out of film school. It's really important, I would say, to continue to try and meet as many people as you can, because in my experience, it's been the absolute best thing for me, is just networking and reaching out to people and making sure that you're making friends with everyone. And at the time I graduated, I was trying to shoot projects for people, so that's another plus. I think as things start to open up a little bit, there's a little bit more potential for maybe internships again, or even just smaller projects to be able to shoot. A little bit of networking, whether it's on Zoom or you grab a coffee or something like that. I think it's just so important to continue to push yourself and really, force yourself into the industry. I know it's like a really weird time, and it's, a lot easier said than done. But in my experience, just making sure that you're reaching out and meeting as many people as possible was always the best thing that you could do, especially after graduating. And, and a lot of my friends honestly moved home, and the industry is not where your home is for the most part. And it's really hard if you want to work in Hollywood to do anything, related to film, on at least in production, like, being in their hometown. And so it just makes it a lot harder. And I totally understand the reasons. Like, I'm blessed to have my family here in LA, and being able to, even during COVID, be able to be comfortable still in, where the industry is. So I know that most people can't speak to that or, experience that, but it's just important to stay here. And I think really just grind, especially right now when everyone's kind of experiencing this lull in the industry.
Yeah. I want to cater that question specifically to women DPs who want to, whether they're at film school or not, but want to enter into the industry and, make amazing stuff like you've been doing. It's obviously, sadly, still a very sexist industry. So what advice would you give to them specifically?
Yeah, I would say to the female DPs, I've never personally had much of a poor experience related to my gender, but, it is out there, and I hear horror stories from other people. And so I think it's really just about being confident in yourself, and making sure you surround yourself with good people. If people are treating you poorly, they are not worth being around. And I think that that's just important for life in general, not even the industry. Just making sure that you surround yourself with positive people that are uplifting and encouraging and really want you to reach the top in terms of being a DP and making your art and fulfilling yourself in that way.
We're nearing the end of the episode, and I want to hear a little bit about your goals for this year. As you told me, you just got hired as, or just now, it's March, at the beginning of this year, got hired
3 months,
as yeah, which is crazy. It's flying by.
Yeah,
but
it is.
Got hired as the DP at Frameio, which is absolutely amazing. So looking ahead at this, again, weird time in the industry with COVID and everything, what are some of your goals that you're shooting for?
Yeah, some goals this year. It's already been amazing just to be able to start working for Frameio, just a company that I respect the leadership. They're all just doing amazing things and really just being forward thinkers, thinking about the future. So that's already just a really exciting opportunity for this year, shooting, whatever projects might come with that. I would say, if anything, outside of that, I would love to continue shooting freelance work. I do get a lot of offers. It's all about, whether I can fit it into my schedule, since I am pretty busy, but would love to shoot some narratives this year, and maybe a couple documentaries and commercials, anything that kind of comes, and get emails all the time, just kind of starting to filter and figure out what I can actually handle and take on, just because it does become double the work, but it's all worth it. And I love what I do, and so it's just exciting to still be able to see the opportunities in the projects that are offered to me. So hopefully just continue to shoot this year, you know, in my full-time job and then outside as well.
Well, not that you need any words of encouragement from a COVID PA, but
love it.
I have no doubt that you'll be able to do it. I truly love your work, and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and have this conversation, especially with your busy schedule. And I think and hope that the people listening to this will learn a lot from, you know, your experience and all of your work. So yeah, I just really appreciate you taking the time to be on.
Thank you so much. Yes, that means a lot. And thank you for having me. It's been a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, audience, those listening to this episode, if you're listening to the audio only version, you should head on over to our YouTube channel to check out the video version. We've been doing the video version for all of the episodes for this year and are having a lot of fun with it. So be sure to check out our YouTube channel and subscribe and all that kind of fun stuff. And yeah, check out links in the description to Alissa's website. Check out her work, follow her on Instagram, all that fun stuff. And episodes come out every Monday at 9 a.m. So we will see you in the next one. See you, everybody.